Sponsored by Bangkok Bank, the Sukhothai Residences, SIPA New Decade Innovation, and Magnolia's Ratcharamri Boulevard.
Good morning, ASEAN. Freshen up your world, your thought, and your idea with us every weekday from 7:30 to 8 a.m. I'm Patsurang Desha Putharangsi.
And I'm Vina Jongprasid. It's Thursday, the 26th of September. Let's first start with Thailand. Kun Pasulan.
Yes, the opposition party said, I mean the Yingluck administration said the opposition party again attacked them for allocating insufficient funds to deal with flood and irrigation issues in the northeastern Thailand. The government insisted, however, that a number of poor people have been reduced, while describing the delivery of quality education as a prolonged problem facing the kingdom. The government was criticized by opposition MPs for seeking 5 large loans totaling 3.3 trillion baht, while the sum constitutes the largest amount of loans ever sought by any administration, the opposition said. The opposition also questioned why, although the ruling Pheu Thai party has 104 MPs from the northeast, the smaller budget had been allocated to the region to tackle floods and improve irrigation. Well, but some 35,000 households in the northeast face drought, while only 20,000 households in the north face similar challenges. Juri Laksana Wisit, a party list MP for Democrat Party, said the government did little to restore democracy beyond handing 7.5 million baht to families whose relatives were killed during the 2010 protest. Democrat MP for Trang Province, Sathit Wongnontoi, meanwhile accused the government of making a number of mistakes in preparing report documents, particularly on the 2011-2012 flood. Sathit added that flood management was ineffective.
And despite the heavy downpours in the past 2 weeks in Bangkok, the Bangkok administration, the BMA, still believes that the capital should escape the floods this rainy season. And an official of the BMA Flood Prevention Center said that runoffs and rain will not coincide with high tides this year. According to the center, rainfall and runoffs are expected to peak in Bangkok late this month, while the high tide period will begin next month. Hence, the current water situation is far less worrying than 2011, the official said. 2 years ago, Bangkok was among the many provinces hit hard by floods. The BMA says that though its flood prevention systems remain pretty much the same, they have been improved to some extent. For instance, flood barriers along the Chao Phraya River are now up to 3 meters high, when 2 years ago they stood at 2.5 meters at the most. The BMA also said that it should be able to clear road surfaces within an hour if the rainfall does exceed 60 milliliters per hour. The city administration remains confident even though nearby provinces such as Ayutthaya, Lopburi, and Prachinburi are already inundated.
Moving on to Cambodia, as Sam Rainsy, the opposition party leader, is again threatening a general strike as it expands its protest of Prime Minister Hun Sen, the newly elected one, of course, after the general election, while UN official said the government must now ensure that the National Assembly is truly representative to promote a successful transition of democracy. Cambodia National Rescue Party leader Sam Rainsy said that the one-day strike would be a response to what he called a constitutional coup by the government. Rainsy explained, in the air, there is an idea of a general strike. So, the whole country for one day, we will call for a strike. All factories, all civil servants, all shopkeepers will stop working that day. Well, his comments came a day after Hun Sen was elected by Parliament, which convened on Monday without boycotting opposition MPs. Rainsy said the CNRP, his own party, will not cooperate in any manner with the legislature or the government, arguing that its leverage is strongest now outside the parliament. On the other hand, the special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the country, Surya P. Subedi from the UN, said every country that undergoes the transition to democracy faces a moment when the rules must change. Cambodia is facing such a moment now. It is critical for the new National Assembly to be represented by the two key parties, for the National Assembly itself to be truly representative of the whole of the Cambodian people, and for it to be concluded that the right to vote was effectively exercised back on 28th July. Mr. Suberdi urged the dialogue continue at an appropriate decision-making level with a view to resolving the current impasse without further delay. He also reiterated his call for calm and restraint. The special rapporteur noted the general restraint exercised by the Cambodian authorities in the use of force in the past weeks, but said he was gravely concerned by what he described as indiscriminate and excessive use of force in several recent incidents, and urged all authorities to allow future demonstrations to proceed without undue restrictions.
Malaysia's government yesterday proposed a legal amendment allowing crime suspects to be detained for years without trial. And this, of course, has prompted opposition charges that it was backing down on promises to scrap the tough security laws. Prime Minister Najib Razak's government proposed in Parliament amendments to the 1959 Prevention of Crime Act, saying the police need strong powers to fight a wave of violent crime in recent months. Najib had only just abolished such powers, which critics have long complained were abused by the authoritarian government to silence dissent in 2011 in the face of public pressure for a more open society. The opposition immediately branded the proposed amendment as a dangerous U-turn on rights. The government is setting back the clock and dragging us back to the era of arbitrary arrest and detention. N. Surendran, a senior leader of the opposition People's Justice Party, said in a statement. Facing ebbing support for his long-ruling coalition and after large street protests for electoral reform, Najib in 2011 abolished the draconian Internal Security Act and the separate emergency ordinance. Both allowed lengthy detention without trial.
Let's see more on Tibet series. Today is about the Tibetan rug making.
Qinghai Tibet Plateau gestates the Tibetan culture with profound deposit from its unique geographical environment and historical origin, and the Tibetan rug is of a bright pearl within the treasure house of Tibetan culture with such a long history and ethnic feature. Tibetan rug is not only an important product of the Tibetan handicraft industry, but also one of the symbols of traditional Tibetan civilization. Tibetan rugs are traditionally made from Tibetan highland sheep's wool called chengpai. The locals use rugs for many purposes, ranging from flooring to wall hanging to horse saddles, though the most common use is of a seating carpet. The carpet making industry in Tibet stretches back hundreds, if not thousands of years, yet as a lowly craft. It was not mentioned in early writings, aside from occasional references to the rugs owned by prominent religious figures. The first detailed accounts of Tibetan rug weaving come from foreigners who entered Tibet with the British invasion of Tibet back in 1903 to 04. The British invaders described a weaving workshop they encountered near Jetsay as beautiful things en route to Lhasa. They recorded a courtyard entirely filled with the weaving looms of both men and women workers making rugs. The workshop was owned and run by one of the local aristocratic families, which is the norm in pre-modern Tibet. Many simpler weavings for domestic use were made at home, but dedicated workshops made the decorated pile rugs that were sold to wealthy families in Lhasa and Shinkanse and the monasteries. The monastic institutions housed thousands of monks who sat on long, low platforms during religious ceremonies that were nearly always covered in hand-woven carpets for comfort. Wealthier monasteries replaced these carpets regularly, providing income and taking gifts in lieu of taxation from hundreds or thousands of weavers. The knotting method used in Tibetan rug making is different from that used in other rug making traditions worldwide. Some aspects of a rug making have been supplanted by cheaper machines in recent times, especially yarn spinning and trimming of the pile after weaving. However, most of the carpets are still made by hand. In Lhasa, rug stores cater to both local, national, and international tourists. Government-sponsored workshops targeted tourists and official delegation gift markets.
Wool fabric, handmade and manufactured by a local community in Chiang Mai Prefecture, Tibet, is also another famous exported product, creating an economic activity, thus improving the locals' living condition.
As an economic activity, Tibetan rug making provides valuable cash income for rural communities who weave in the winter months. Several overseas investors and NGOs are trying to encourage a revival of high-quality local wool and natural dyes in Tibetan rug making. But the Tibetan tradition of styling and patterning stays the same. Patsurang Desha Putarangsi reports.
After the break, Japan is to relax the visa rules for many ASEAN countries.
News for ASEAN region. Again, Kumina, as Japan plans to relax the visa requirements for ASEAN countries, namely Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos, by the end of the year. Of course, the plan is part of the efforts to boost tourism to promote the country's economic growth strategy, and also the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is expected to unveil this plan himself at the same time as he announces his decision to lift the nation's sales tax rate to 8% from the current 5%. As part of its growth strategy crafted in June as one of the 3 arrows of Abenomics, the other policies being drastic monetary easing and massive fiscal spending. Mr. Abe's administration pledged to ease visa requirements to encourage more foreigners to visit Japan. Back in July, Japan exempted short-stay tourists from Thailand and Malaysia from having to obtain a visa. The government is considering allowing the issuance of multiple entry visas for visitors from Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos. Ahead of Tokyo's 2020 Summer Olympics, Japan will aim to increase the number of tourists from Asia and invigorate the tourism industry at home. Mr. Abe's government plans to submit 8 bills related to the growth strategy, such as one including tax cuts to bolster capital spending, to the extraordinary parliamentary session slated to be convened October 15th.
Vietnam's tourism workers are not as nearly skilled as their competitors from other Southeast Asian countries. A major problem in the region. Plans to launch a shared tourism labor market in 2015, said an official. Le Tuan An, head of the Vietnam National Administration of Tourism's International Cooperation Department, gave the warning at a recent meeting in Ho Chi Minh City about applying the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Agreement on mutual recognition of tourism professionals set to take effect in 2015, the Saigon Times Online reported. A nationwide survey released at the event showed that most hospitality businesses interviewed thought Vietnamese workers need to be trained more in foreign language skills and soft skills like communication, teamwork, and problem solving. The survey, which was undertaken via a European Union-sponsored program of responsible tourism development, was conducted among 183 accommodations, 92 travel companies, and hundreds of destinations, restaurants, and healthcare centers. In the meantime, when the ASEAN Agreement comes into effect, any person who has a certificate granted by the Tourism Professional Certificate Board in a member state will be eligible to work in any other country. So far, ASEAN members have set up common competency standards for 6 out of 32 job titles, namely receptionist, room services, kitchen, food and beverage services, travel agencies, and tour operators. If Vietnamese laborers fail to improve their job skills, many will possibly lose their jobs due to competition from their peers in ASEAN countries, An said. He said member countries like Laos, Cambodia, and Indonesia are strongly starting preparations for the upcoming agreement.
Philippine economic growth is expected to stay above 7% for the 4th consecutive quarter as the country outperforms the rest of the Asian region. Separate analyst forecasts showed that the economy would grow past the top end of the government's 6 to 7% target for the 3rd quarter of the year. This was after the Philippine economy grew by 7.5% in the second quarter and 7.7% in the first, making it the fastest growing market in Southeast Asia. First, according to First Metro Investment Corporation, he said in the report last week that given the backdrop of decelerating inflation and increased government infrastructure spending, they remain optimistic that gross domestic product growth in the second half will again exceed the 7% target of the government. Continuing low interest environment and better exports prospects provide additional support to this view. Supporting the country's growth was steady increase in remittances from overseas Filipino workers. Of course, Karina, the Philippines is very famous for sending workers overseas, and they send the money back home. But then domestic consumption, which is supported largely by remittances from migrant workers, accounted for about 70% of the GDP. Mirroring FMIC's sentiment, Britain-based financial giant HSBC said it was highly possible the growth in the third quarter would surpass 7%. It sees the Philippine economy growing by 7.1% this year, but next year growth is expected to decelerate to 5.4%. Although the HSBC Asian Economic Research head Frederick Newman said there was a high upside for the economy next year. Newman said while remittances currently provide the Philippines with enough dollar income to pay for the imported goods and services it needs, it won't be there forever.
In Tech Savvy this week, we will meet a technology which actually tests the effectiveness of sunscreen. Welcome to Tech Savvy, a program to broaden your perspective on the IT industry. People apply sunscreen to protect themselves from the sun's UV rays. Tech Savvy today will bring you to see a technology which tests the effectiveness of sunscreen products.
Some people spend a lot of time and money to find a cosmetic product to protect themselves from the sun. But how do we know the cosmetic product that we buy can really protect us?
As people become more aware of the risks that come with excessive sun exposure, they find a method to protect their skin, such as buying sunscreen products. Yes, how effective are these sun protection products? For several decades, sun protection has been evaluated by in vivo methods or the tests on human volunteers. The method evaluates the appearance of a sunstroke on the sun-simulated exposed volunteers with and without application of cream. However, the method has been challenged for its ethical reasons and excessive costs, and authorities want to switch to in vitro methods which only involve substrate in laboratory. This kind of testing is promoted in Thailand by Helioscreen Asia, a newly joint investment between Helioscreen from France and the Thailand's Chemical Intercorporation.
Very easier to get good reproducibility with in vitro method because there are analytical way of measuring. In case you are, of course, respecting plenty of conditions which we have described in several publications in cosmetic journals, than with in vivo method. Because in vivo method, it's different for UVB, for UVA, and it depending on the voluntaries, because you can do twice the same method in vivo.
The in vitro testing involves applying the sample product on a substrate surface and spreading it. Temperature is controlled during the entire process. The sample is then exposed to the UV for 30 minutes before being measured for transmittance. Calculation is done based on what is called the absorbance curve. Thailand is the potential market for in vitro testing since Helioscreen has worked and specialized for more than 10 years in the in vitro evaluation of sun protection products, and it was qualified by ISO standardization process.
Many agency in Thailand that they offer the in vitro sunscreen testing, but without standard. So if we can standardize our testing and our result will be very stable for one product type, this would be very good business here.
In the recent years, the cosmetic industry in Thailand has been growing up dramatically.
The cosmetic industry in Thailand has been grow a lot because like I said right from the beginning that cosmetic in Thailand, we are the leader in Asean country, and with the rate of growth, we always have growth of 2 digits, and our export value is about $3,006 million US dollars.
In the next 2 years, when the ASEAN Economic Community or AEC will be implemented, the cosmetic market will become even more competitive as the 10 countries in the regions open up all their gates. The new technology is needed for the Thai cosmetic companies to compete with ASEAN and the world. Jan Polidetme reports.
That's it for today's edition of Good Morning ASEAN. We'll see you again, same time, same place, same channel.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Veena Jungprasit.
and I'm พัชสุรางค์เดชาพุทธรังสีสวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะ